Hello, you're welcome to another episode of The Heart of the Matter. Today we're going to be talking about children with developmental and learning difficulties. And with me in the studio today is Dotun Akonde, who has a foundation that looks after these children. Dotun, you're welcome to The Heart of the Matter.
Thank you very much, sir.
Let's talk about learning difficulties. By far the largest difficulty you deal with is autism. And before I ask you what autism is, what brought you into this field? You're an economist. You studied economics, and then you worked in the bank, and now you've got a foundation. This is what you do,
yes,
full time.
12 years ago, my son, who was 2 years at 12 years ago, had some challenges, and I was fascinated by that. Also, I was worried. He would look at me and run from one end of the room to the other, and he wouldn't say anything. And I kept taking him to the hospital, saying, there's something wrong with this boy. And I said, oh, Mr. Akonde, don't worry, he's a boy. Boys talk late, and don't bother about it. He will outgrow it. That is one of the things that I really find very, very annoying. Eventually, when I found a doctor who had experienced that kind of odd behavior, she said to me, Dotun, your son has autism. I said, first of all, thank you. Thank God that I'm not going crazy. It looked like I was the only one seeing it and everybody else wasn't. So she said to me, can you afford to take him abroad? I said, no, because I have a daughter and my husband is here. Plus, I didn't have the financial capacity to do that. She said to me, okay, I'll give you a few tips. Take him out of school, after school, for about 1 or 2 hours, whatever he's learnt in school, reteach. And then get a speech and language therapist into the house. Also, try to see how you can help him with the self-help skills, that is the buttoning of his shirt, the wearing of his trousers. Teach him every skill he needs to know. And it took us 4 years before we eventually got the speech out, before my son could tell me, Mommy, my cup, take, give. Those are some of the things I saw. And then for a long time, he stayed on that. For about 1.5 years, he stayed on single words. And eventually, he started to use the sentences. But what intrigued me the most was that in between the times that he wasn't talking, he was learning. So that was what I found very intriguing about autism.
So you got into this field of work because you had the experience of actually raising a son,
yes,
who was autistic.
Yes. When I saw that Agboli recovered, I said to myself, there must be many children out there that have these challenges, and the parents don't know, just like I didn't know at the initial stage, that something is wrong. So I said to myself, I didn't say to myself, actually I was in the bathroom that particular day, and the Holy Spirit ministered to me, start a center. Okay. And I said to a few people around me, and they said, oh, it's needed, we will support you. And you know how we will support you goes. God just put them in your way for them to be able to support you. Eventually, we approached GTB, and Taya Adirioku of blessed memory bought into the idea and helped us to start Patrick Speech and Languages Center. Okay,
so now let's go back. What is autism?
That is a big word. Autism is a different thing to different people, but I will give you the scientific definition. Autism is actually a developmental disorder that affects the neurons of the child, and also sometimes the biology of the child. The neurons being that it has a the child would have challenges in the brain. What typically happens in the brain is that when the child, in the second trimester, when the child is, the fetus at that point is being formulated, there are some neurons that form part of the brain, that continues to wire itself. Ordinarily, I'm not a medical person, but from research, they said those neurons are not supposed to have been formed yet. But in a child with autism, it comes out formed. So what typically happens is every time you teach the child with autism a skill, the brain has the tendency to rewire itself. That is why we see some of them recovering. And that rewiring has to be done at an early age when the child is still young. So that is why they always say that early intervention is key. By the time you find out the child has autism, you need to put that child in therapy to start.
What are the signs that the child has autism?
The first thing parents usually see is that my child is not talking, or my child spoke at 12 months and at 18 months I began to see loss of speech.
Okay.
So that's usually the first sign. The second sign is odd behavior. And the odd behavior in the sense that the child has this particular behavior that he does regularly, or repetitive behavior that he does all the time. For instance, lining up of objects, sometimes looking from the corner of the eyes, you see them flapping, you see them jumping from one place to the other, and sometimes you find that they tend to want to, hold on to a particular object for a period of time. Also, in the area of social skills, they don't play with other children. Okay. They tend to play alone. If you put them with a group of children, the child will retract and go and play on his own. Those are some of the signs you see. But the child must have a sign in the social skill domain: communication, which is speech, verbal or non-verbal, and repetitive or odd behavior. Okay.
So now, let's just distinguish from a child with autism and the child that has something like Down syndrome, which is you normally see in the visage of the child. Autism is not Down's syndrome.
No, autism is not Down's. A child with autism would look like you and I. Okay. It does not have, we call it an invisible disorder because it doesn't have
any physical
presentation. You can only see it in the behavior, or sometimes in the speech, or sometimes, like I said, in social setting, and then sometimes you find some of them covering their ears to loud sounds. That is in the sensory unit, which is also a big thing with autism.
Okay, now what you are doing is you have this Patrick Speech and Languages Center. Tell us a bit about Patrick Speech and Languages Center.
Oh, well, Patrick Speech came into being in 2006. 2005, when I decided to start up the center, I went abroad to study what autism was. I volunteered in different organizations to look at what the setup was like, and I brought the idea back to Nigeria. So Patrick Speech basically is for children with autism and other related developmental disorders. That is those that have Asperger's. Asperger's are those that have speech but have challenges in social skills, in learning, and in communication. Even though they have speech, they find it difficult communicating with others. Okay,
yes. So tell us a little bit more about that. So the parent of a child with Asperger's would notice the child, it talks all right, but is not able to get his or her message across.
Yes, or sometimes talks incessantly about a particular thing that he loves. The reason is that the child with Asperger's doesn't understand that what he is thinking or feeling, the other person is not feeling or thinking the same thing. They always assume that whatever their thoughts are, the next person is thinking the same thing. Okay. So you have to try to tell them to say, oh, the person doesn't understand you. The person doesn't understand. Can you stay on this particular conversation? So the child with Asperger's syndrome tends to get missed. Sometimes they get missed in the society, and sometimes learning for them is great to a particular thing, but they have challenges with communications. They can do science, maths, and things like that easily. They can walk through it, but anything that has to do with abstract, the child with Asperger's tend to want to, have challenges.
You also mentioned something else earlier.
There's
the attention deficit.
Yes, there's the ADHD. That is the attention deficit hyperactive disorder. That has to do with, most of the time, you try a bit of sensory integration with a child with ADHD. If it doesn't work, or if the child is growing older and the ADHD, the attention deficit is getting worse, you might need to put in a bit of medication.
So by attention deficit, what you're saying is the child
cannot...
is
not attending. The child cannot attend in a setting, sometimes in a regular setting. The child cannot sit in a classroom. Classroom accommodations need to be put in place for a child with ADHD if that child is in regular school. ADHD, for instance, I'll give you a scenario. A child is having challenges with all the noise going on around him. How can that child learn? It's almost impossible. So you have to put accommodations in place. Make sure that the arrangement you have put for a child with ADHD has less sensory overload in terms of too many things on the wall, too much noise around him, putting him in a chair, or sometimes getting him something to rest his feet on. So those are some of the accommodations you need to put in place to help a child with ADHD to
now,
learn.
how prevalent are these conditions in our own setting here in Nigeria?
Well, we don't have figures. For instance, we always work with the figures from CDC in the US.
Okay.
So what they say is that in 2011, the prevalence was 1 in 100 children. In 2000,
in Nigeria?
Worldwide.
Worldwide, okay.
Yes. They are saying that in 2012, they came out with a figure that says 1 in 88, which is quite alarming, telling us that there's a rise.
Okay.
And because we don't know the cause of autism, because there is no cure attached to autism, we cannot say this is the reason why we are seeing this figure. And it's 1 in 54 boys, which is quite alarming. It tells us that it's a boy disorder. Boys tend to have autism more than girls. So those are the facts that we have. We don't have any figures in Nigeria. For instance, in Patrick's, we work with whoever comes in, which is actually not enough. Because there are so many people out there. We can deal with those that watch TV or have TV and can watch TV. What about those in the rural areas? Is something we are trying very hard, very much to address, and telling the government to come in and help us, help these people that are out there, because those other people will think, oh, it's a spiritual matter. I reject it in Jesus' name. Or they say it's my mother-in-law down the road, you know, that is after me. Or maybe I did something and God is punishing me by giving me this child, not knowing that it is possible for these children to learn. It just takes lots and lots of love and tons of patience.
So, early discovery is really a very important key to being able to...
Very important.
Now, you talked about your son and the amount of time that you had to devote to him. Is this something that parents have to do full time? Would one of the parents have to say, look, I'm going to give up work so that I can spend time with this child?
Not necessarily. It's just that you need to create time. Whatever time, because you cannot say, okay, because I have a child, but when my son was growing up, I didn't give up work. I was at work, but I would come home at 6.
Okay.
I would manage all the self-help skills, because you have to teach it. You have to teach him how to hold his brush to brush his teeth. Yes. You have to teach him how to put the right foot in the right shoe, because he could wear it the other way around and walk around as if nothing is wrong. You would have to teach him to straighten his trousers, because he would walk around with his trousers skewed to one side and wouldn't. So you have to teach all those little details that come to our other children, neurotypical children, as easy as as it comes. With a child with autism, you have to teach it. So at least one of the parents has to be able to give time.
And now you get a lot of children coming into the center, and you're actually doing that part of the work for them, or what does the center do?
In the center we have 5 or 6 units. We have the speech unit, where we teach them how to use language, where we do all the oral motor exercises, and we do a lot of reading and a lot of sentence building. We have the group sessions, where we teach a lot of the social skills. We have the occupational therapy sessions, where we do a lot of the massage and the sensory integration. We have the physical unit, where we get them outside, because a lot of them don't have physicals. They can sit in one place doing one thing the whole day. And we have the music, which is very, very big. Music is big. Music is big. I can't say it enough. Because they work very well with music. And then we have the audiovisual, which is the computers or the iPads or things that help them track, give visual tracking to whatever they are learning. You have to use visuals, a lot of visuals. In all the settings, the child has to be able to see and do. So you can get the physical item, the picture of whatever you're teaching, and sometimes you need to demonstrate what it is. So those are some of the things we do at Patrick's.
Well, thank you very much. We'll be back to you in a moment. Viewers, stay tuned. We're going on a break. When we come back, we'll have a final word from Dr. Akande. God bless you. Stay tuned.
Our son was healed of an incurable brain disorder called autism by the power of God. Autism Autism is a very complicated brain disorder where certain parts of the brain responsible for speech and language, social behavior, social skills, learning, and so on are affected. Those parts of the brain don't develop in the normal way that they should. And it's an invisible disorder in the sense that it's not something that you will see on a scan or an MRI or anything like that. So it just boiled down really to trusting God. I mean, the Bible is clear on the subject of healing. You know, we're healed by the stripes of Jesus Christ. So it's up to us to just believe it and receive it. Of course, the believing and receiving part is a bit difficult because we have an enemy called the devil who will do everything in his power to make people feel, or to make people believe that God's promises are not real and that they can't receive them. So, you know, the devil will fight you in a lot of ways, especially by the things he puts in your mind. He'll plant all sorts of thoughts of doubt and unbelief to make you think that it's not going to happen. But I praise God if you stand strong and continue to be courageous and move forward with God, you know. And that's what we did, and we're happy that that he's healed. Any family that has to deal with having a special needs child, you know, it's extremely stressful and frustrating, and we've heard how a lot of marriages even have broken up. But if you continue to trust God and look up to Him, you'll make it in the end. It's really quite difficult to have a sort of tailor-made solution to the problem. So it's really just mostly a matter of trial and error. You know, most people just try something, see if it works. If it doesn't, try something else. But there are some basic therapies like the speech therapy, the occupational therapy, and I think those are the two most common ones which you will find most people doing. But for the most part, you just study the child and try and analyze what their needs are at the place where they are, and then just tailor whatever treatment that you have. At the time it happened, I didn't have a relationship with God to speak of. But when I saw how it was going, and I just realized that if anything is going to save him, it's going to be God, you know. And so I started to pray and read my Bible and all that, and then gradually started to cultivate a relationship with God and allowed Him to guide me and show me how to go. And at every step He was there. Every time I fell down, He would pick me up and I would keep going. It's easy to get discouraged, but I always tell people to magnify God at all times and minimize the circumstances, because God is bigger and greater than any sickness or disease or any circumstance that we can come up against. So it's just a question of getting it into your mind that God is greater than this. Believe what He says, receive what He has given you, and it's just quite that simple. But you know, it's a difficult process, but with some determination, you know, it's possible to let God take you through.
Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking with Dr. Akande on child learning and development, particularly for children with learning and developmental difficulties. We've been talking really about autism. Doctor, when you discover autism in a child, it's easier to apply a remedy. What if that condition is not discovered until the child is 16 or even 20? How do you deal with it then?
Well, we always tell the parents not to put too much worry when the child is discovered late. I'll give an example. A boy came to us at 19 with no skills. He had been in regular school all his life, and he came and we just said, let's try him on the keyboard, and we put him on the piano, and we taught him music, and within 6 months, he learned how to play with his left hand and the right hand. You never know what is inside those children. So what we want to look at when they're older is what can they do. We now use what they can do to build around those skills that they have and those skills that they are challenged in. So you find out that doing what they can do and what they love to do becomes like a reinforcer to doing all the other things.
Now, does that mean that the child may have lost out on the opportunity for a formal education?
Yes, okay. That means that it's possible that the child has lost out completely. Some of them eventually gain it, and we raise them, like there's another boy at the center that has educational capacity. He's capable of learning in regular school. So we are building him towards the secondary school education, maybe the JS3, and then we send him back into the secondary school system, where he will take it from JS3 through to SS3. So those are some of these children would have ordinarily been missed or been labeled as, oh, he's a non-entity, he cannot do it. But the beauty of autism is that it's not an intellectual disorder, it's a neurological disorder. And
I don't know very much about autism. Can I say that in our culture in Nigeria, we are very swift to declare people as mad.
Yes.
And an autistic child is no way got a mental disorder at all. It's not a mental disorder.
It's not a mental disorder. It is not a mental disorder. It's an intellectual, it's a neurological disorder. Yes.
And so a parent hasn't any reason to be ashamed. And as a matter of fact, if a parent really wants to help the child, the quicker you intervene, the better.
Yes. Okay. If you want to help the child, the earlier you bring this child out, don't lock them up, don't be ashamed of them. What we find is that a lot of parents are ashamed because these children do not understand social settings. I'll give you an instance. A lady in the UK said she does not see any reason why 22 men are running after one ball, and the ball goes into the net and everybody shouts, "Yay!" And she is in a public place. She feels excitement inside of her, and all she wants to do is shout, "Yay!" Everybody would say, "Oh, that is not appropriate." So those are the social skills you need to teach. She learnt it. Her mother taught her that when you are in this environment, it's not the time to shout "yay." When you are in your room and you're excited, yes, it's appropriate for you to shout "yay." So those are some of the things that people out there see and say, "Oh, what's wrong with that child? What's wrong with that girl?" You know, and then they begin to, what we don't understand, we tend to be afraid of it. So we are encouraging parents to please don't put these children. It is disheartening when we get them at 17. Disheartening. 17, no skills, behavioral issues, they are being flogged in the house, and all you need to do is understand these children, and life becomes easy for them, because even for them it's difficult. It's so difficult because they have to deal with all the sensory issues all around them.
Now, what do you think our viewer ought to know about autism? I want you to give them a final word about, well, let's not just say autism, but about learning difficulties that children often suffer from. Give them a final word.
Well, I would like to tell parents and families and friends and neighbors of people that have developmental challenges not to alienate the children, not to put them in an uncomfortable situation, not to put the families in an uncomfortable position. Let them bring these children out. Let us teach. The mother can teach. Teach every skill the child needs to know, because the child understands. It's just having challenges expressing, which is using his voice. And those are the things we want parents to know. They are not disabled. They can learn. Let's try to bring them out.
And they can live perfectly normal lives.
Yes. They can. Some of them recover. They can live perfectly normal lives. And what we want is for them to be able to function outside of others. We don't want them being shielded by the family. Bring them out. Look at the skills that they can do. Everybody cannot go at the same pace. You and I are different in our own ways. That is how it is with them. They might have challenges learning. Let us break down their learning into smaller skills and teach it over and over again. Sometimes it takes 100, you have to teach it 100 times, but they do learn. It's just that it takes time. Please love them unconditionally. They are wonderful and warm children. When they understand that you can accept and love them, they will warm up to you. They will see you coming in and they will run to you. They are wonderful children.
It's been wonderful having you on the Heart of the Matter. Viewers, you can follow Heart of the Matter on Twitter. The information and how to follow us will be up on the screen. And also you can get in touch with our guest. If you need help, if you need advice from her, you can get in touch with her. All the contact details will be put on the screen also. Thus, we're really grateful that you spared the time to come and talk with our viewers today.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching The Heart of the Matter. We'll be back next week with another edition of The Heart of the Matter. Until then, stay mightily blessed.
Sorry, Mrs. Benson. There's nothing more we can do. I suggest you take him to another school. Better still, a special school.
Some kind of minor problem we can just wish away anytime we like. The boy has been in primary 1 for 6 years. For 6 good years I have flushed money down the drain trying to take care of a boy that is abnormal.
Have you tried seeking spiritual help?
Spiritual help?
What are you doing? What are you doing for me?
I have reasons to believe that Junior has autism. I mean, there are places where you could take him to. I know somewhere, a friend of mine works there, and I hear they're very good.
Please tell me, madam, can my son have a normal life?
It's not a death sentence.
So he can live a normal life, live a life like every other child.
I don't see why not. That's why we're here.
Somebody please